Hi, and welcome back to U.S. History with me, Mr. Snyder. Today we are going to discuss how the United States went from being an isolationist nation in the 1930s to an interventionist nation right before we joined World War II. Learning targets for today are to describe which side was winning the war in Europe and why. We'll describe Roosevelt's foreign policy in the 1930s and the debate between isolationists and interventionists. And we'll explain how the U.S. gradually, over time, becomes more and more involved in the war before the attack on Pearl Harbor. So leading up to the war, Hitler violates what was called the Munich Pact and just keeps on invading. Again, they're trying to, Munich Pact prevented the Germany from taking over certain countries, but then 9 months later he violates that and takes over those countries anyway. But he knows he has a problem. Germany's situated right in the middle of Europe, and he doesn't want to fight a war on two fronts because he doesn't want to upset the Soviet Union on one side and Great Britain and France on the other side. So he basically eliminates one of his opponents and he signs a non-aggression pact with the Soviet Union. So the Nazi-Soviet or the Soviet-Nazi non-aggression pact, promising to, one, not attack one another, and two, eventually when they do invade Poland, they will divide and conquer Poland equally between the two of them. So on September 1st, 1939, World War I begins with the invasion of Poland. That is the thing that officially begins World War II. Germany invades Poland using a tactic called blitzkrieg, and it's the same thing as a football blitz. It's throwing so much force and materials and weapons at your opponent that they cannot handle it, and they cannot possibly do anything about it. So it's German for lightning warfare, and it emphasizes speed and firepower. So a lot of firepower very quickly. Uses tanks, planes, jeeps, infantry, and then later on in October, the Soviet Union invades Poland on the other side. So Poland is pretty much screwed at this point. Here is the list of the Axis powers and the Allied powers. The Axis powers in World War II, the three main ones you'll have to know are Germany, Italy, and Japan eventually joins the Axis. The Allied powers are Britain, France, and the Soviet Union, and eventually the United States will join on the side of our allies because of the trade relationships with Britain and France and the common language with Britain and our common ties with Great Britain. So the war moves on, and Germany, after invading Poland, invades Denmark, Norway, the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg. And all of the nations, because of the blitzkrieg being used, fall almost immediately. Next, Germany turns its eyes on France. And France, after World War I, built what is called the Maginot Line, which is a series of thick forests and defenses that were put on the border of Germany and France, just in case Germany tried anything like they did in World War I. And they roll through it like it's nothing, and they invade France. And eventually they divide France into two sections, which is occupied France in the northern half and Vichy France in the southern half. The Battle of France, the Germans forced through the Maginot Line. Again, there's your definition of that. It takes place in a little over a month. Eventually, Germans occupy Paris in less than a month, but basically France is now belonging to the Germans, and now Germany has all of Europe at its disposal. So let's move back to the United States and the debate between isolationists and interventionists. Should the United States enter World War II? An isolationist viewpoint would say that no, we should not. We want to stay isolated. We should avoid alliances because that is what caused World War I. It's one of the reasons. We should focus on the Great Depression at home because we're trying to fix it with the New Deal. We should completely stay neutral and we don't want to get involved because World War I was a mistake, so World War II will be a mistake as well. And the interventionists, however, say that the United States should work with nations to promote a collective sense of security among countries. What the Axis is doing is wrong and threatens American interests. We should aid the Allies because they are fighting for democracy and freedom. And we should put pressure on the Axis powers and prepare to enter the war, since we are the largest industrial power in the world at this point. So a committee called America First forms to keep the U.S. out of the war by promoting what is called isolationism. So the United States signs 3 neutrality acts in 1935, 36, and 37. And these neutrality acts keep us neutral. They withhold weapons and loans from warring nations. And they do allow some trade with warring nations on a cash and carry basis, but not with weapons or anything that can be used in war. Starting in 1939, there is a cash and carry provision put into this Neutrality Act, which still keeps the U.S. neutral, but we need manufacturing jobs and we need trade because of the Great Depression. So there's 2 stipulations to this: cash, carry. Buyers must pay in cash. We're not going to loan to any countries at war, because if we're invested in the success of a nation, we need to see that nation win, or else we're not going to get that money back. And the other thing is buyers are supposed to send ships to pick up their own weapons, because we don't want to get any U.S. ships sunk. It's later modified to be the Lend-Lease program. You can see here that it authorizes Roosevelt to lend aid to any country that he sees fit. This is basically an economic declaration of war on the Axis powers, because we do give and loan $40 billion worth of war materials to the Allied powers. And so here is the process of us gradually joining the war. At first, we're neutral in the 1930s, but Roosevelt, his policy is he wants to get involved. He wants to get involved, but the isolationists are preventing him from doing so. So we go from a process of being neutral to the cash and carry, which only allows trade on a limited basis. And we also start the Lend-Lease program, which allows the United States to lend war materials to any nation. So that is the process of how we got involved. Fill out your learning targets, and I will see you later. Goodbye.